I get stuck into everything else, you might have missed this. Today it's emerged that the Labour Party's largest donation came from a Cayman Islands registered hedge fund with shares in fossil fuels, arms manufacturers and private healthcare. They took £4 million from a hedge fund that invests in everything they claim to hate, basically, on a tax haven that they claim that they want to clamp down on. The donation fell within the 1 week window where Labour didn't have to declare it until after the election. So it looks like they were trying to maybe hide it.
You know, in whose interests will they govern? And who are the kind of material backers of this project? Which in political terms, you know, is emerged quite rapidly. You know, Starmer is not someone who had a long kind of career in politics and in the Labour Party and built up a power base within the party prior to coming into the leadership. So this project around him has been built up quite quickly. And I think what we see is that it's been heavily influenced by people who are quite long-term factional fighters in the party and that have leaned on financial backers who have traditionally supported the party's kind of centre-right and right wing. So to kind of to move forward a little bit in time to the donation that I guess we're here to talk primarily about. Quadrature is a quite a large hedge fund which controls or which has holdings according to its last filings with the US SEC of about $6 billion. It's a large hedge fund. Its average salary for staff is about £3 million a year, wow. which is quite a lot even for the industry. I mean, there's some quite funny reporting from the kind of
how humiliating it becomes for Starmer when reports reveal that the Labour Party accepted a £4 million contribution from a hedge fund firm investing in everything Labour claims to oppose. Strikingly, this sum was said to be allocated toward the party's climate agenda, yet the company holds shares worth hundreds of millions in fossil fuels, private health care, and arms production. Why would a corporation offer such a vast donation to Labour? Well, matters turn murky and suspicious, and what has surfaced now could prove the final blow to Keir Starmer's political journey. It haunts the entire Labour movement since everyone is entangled in one of the most explosive controversies. In this video, let's uncover the details and examine how the situation is deteriorating for Starmer and his party. Let's begin. Keir Starmer shaped his public image around honesty, openness, and defending ordinary citizens. He presented himself as the leader who would restore confidence in government, pledging to cleanse British politics and stamp out corruption. His speeches framed him as the antidote to the misconduct and financial scandals that had plagued the Conservatives. For years, he denounced secret deals, lobbying abuses, and corporate dominance over decision-making, assuring that under Labour such practices would disappear. His statement was unmistakable. Labour would represent the public, not the privileged. Yet all of it was deception.
To change Britain, we must change ourselves. We need to clean up politics. No more VIP fast lanes, no more kickbacks for colleagues, no more revolving doors between government and the companies they regulate. I will restore standards in public life with a total crackdown on crony.
That carefully constructed persona has crumbled. The reality has emerged. Starmer and his Labour Party stand revealed as equally corrupt. Perhaps even worse, at the center of this controversy lies an astonishing £4 million gift from Quadrature Capital, a hedge fund incorporated in the Cayman Islands. This isn't an ordinary fund. It's a business that has poured hundreds of millions into sectors Labour claims to oppose, including fossil fuels, weapons production, and private health care. The very Labour Party that pledged to promote renewable energy, cut dependence on defense profiteers, and safeguard the National Health Service has been exposed taking cash from a firm thriving on all three. The reporter who uncovered this deal disclosed that Starmer was linked to a program backed by corporations seeking to. What makes this even more striking is the way Labour dealt with the donation. It wasn't revealed publicly when it was received. Instead, it was intentionally concealed from voters until months after the election. The timing was no accident, but a deliberate strategy to dodge scrutiny, keeping the public unaware as they cast their ballots. By the moment the truth surfaced, Starmer was already in office. This secrecy sparks a pressing question. What did Quadrature gain in exchange? The outcome, as many suspected, was tens of millions in discrete political advantages. Labour didn't. Simply accept the cash and move on. They ensured their wealthy backers enjoyed a return on investment. Within weeks of assuming power, Starmer's government introduced subtle yet decisive policy changes. Moves that convenient.
And I understand why people rightly feel somewhat kind of misled or cheated when integrity and public service has been the main pitch of this party, and you now see that they have been doing things that the vast majority of what's been reported is within the rules and has been declared, but the rules are not perfect, and just because something is declared doesn't mean it's not a potential conflict of interest. The point of declaring stuff is so that people like you or I, or even members of the public, can make up their own minds about whether it represents a conflict of interest. It doesn't negate the possibility that it is a conflict of interest, of course. But I think it's worth, just always putting these stories into a wider context and saying, what does it tell us about the Labour Party? Anyway.
These weren't random policy tweaks. They matched exactly with measures that would help the hedge fund boost its profits. Labour, the party that vowed to serve citizens, was now perceived as serving its wealthy financiers instead. This scandal isn't only about one payment. It highlights the larger issue of who actually holds power in Britain. For years, the public was told that Labour spoke for the working class, that it stood firmly against the grip of rich elites and corporate excess. But by examining the firm that bankrolled Labour and its investments, it becomes obvious that the party never...
Fossil fuel investors, arms manufacturers, private healthcare, offshore tax havens, British billionaires allowed into Downing Street, a football club worried about a new football regulator. What are they all getting for their money, Mr. Starmer?
It's made to sound much more complicated than it is oftentimes. Essentially, they're kind of placing bets through the instrument of often buying securities or shares in publicly listed companies. They're essentially kind of placing a bet on whether the value of these shares will go up or down by having a position which is either kind of going long on it, in which case they are hoping that the value goes up, or going short on it, which is essentially betting that the value of this, usually a publicly traded company, will go down. There are probably people who know much more about the kind of financial industry than me, who are kind of tearing their hair out slightly. That's probably a slight oversimplification.
You're hedging your bets, basically. That's where the
very
comes from.
Very good.
Now it's widely acknowledged how Labour favoured that hedge fund firm. Previously, Labour built its reputation on climate action, consistently pledging to shift the UK away from fossil fuels and toward renewable energy. These commitments struck a chord with environmentally aware voters, who viewed Labour as the clear alternative to Conservatives, often criticised for putting corporate priorities above climate responsibility. Yet those assurances now seem little more than empty words. Quadrature Capital, the hedge fund that delivered Labour its largest political gift, holds vast stakes in fossil fuel giants, including ExxonMobil and Cenovus Energy. These corporations are not just minor players in the energy field. They rank among the most notorious polluters.
Politics is fundamentally about representing the interests of different groups. My personal view on this is that there is always going to be conflict in politics, because you can't represent at the same time the interests of, say, the financial sector, and, as it relates to the average person, the interests of the working person, because in lots of ways, the financial sector benefits from certain policies being enacted which are not to the benefit of the working person. There is no, I mean, I think Labour are very keen to try out this line about being pro-business and pro.
ExxonMobil, for example, has been accused of bankrolling misinformation campaigns to downplay climate change, while Cenovus Energy has been tied to environmental disasters caused by oil spills and carbon-heavy operations. Labour's acceptance of Quadrature's money raises a pressing question. How can a party claiming to fight climate change take millions from a fund deeply entrenched in the fossil fuel sector? The explanation is as bleak as it is clear. Labour's green pledges were little more than a marketing tactic aimed at winning climate-conscious voters. Since entering office, the party has quietly stepped back from its boldest climate measures, postponing major green investments and diluting promises on renewable energy. Meanwhile, Quadrature Capital has expanded its stakes in oil corporations, signaling that investors expect enormous returns under Starmer's leadership.
Plans. And I think the British public appreciates us being straight and saying, because of the damage that the Tories have done to the economy, we can't now do everything that we wanted to do. I'd much rather be straight with the British public than make a promise that I can't keep. So those commitments that we've made to the Green Prosperity Plan, Clean Power by 2030, all those commitments remain and they're fully costed. But we can't now afford to make new investments that we otherwise would.
Before moving ahead, let us ask, are you enjoying the video? If so, please like and share it, and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive content on the dramatic shifts unfolding in British politics. Let's carry on. In the meantime, Labour has shown no intent to enforce tougher rules on fossil fuel giants, despite earlier pledges to restrain them. The truth is undeniable. Labour isn't challenging the fossil fuel industry. It is shielding it, guaranteeing that the very corporations driving climate destruction continue to prosper. Labour's duplicity does not end with environmental policy. For years, the party branded itself as a champion of peace, criticizing reckless interventions abroad and condemning war profiteering. They repeatedly accused conservative governments of cozy ties with the defense sector, charging them with fueling instability through lucrative arms contracts. Labour supporters long took pride in the party's supposed devotion to diplomacy over militarism, trusting Starmer would uphold that tradition by resisting unchecked influence from weapons manufacturers. That image now lies in ruins. Quadrature Capital, the same hedge fund financing Labour, holds significant stakes in Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, two of the world's largest defense contractors. These firms don't simply build weapons. They profit directly from endless conflict, supplying arms that sustain wars across the globe. They have been accused of arming authoritarian regimes and benefiting from state defense contracts that funnel billions into their accounts whenever military budgets expand. After taking Quadrature's cash, Labour wasted no time aligning with the agenda of its benefactors. The party has already boosted defense spending, ensuring more taxpayer money flows toward arms manufacturers. They have refused to tackle war profiteering, leaving companies like Lockheed and Northrop Grumman free to rake in record-breaking profits without oversight.
Wanted to.
Yeah.
But one of the issues I've been told by many of the experts we've spoken to is actually it's all very well. We actually can't spend a lot more money. You've got to sort out the procurement. You can't just okay. Well, let's just have another battleship. Or that's not how these things do take time. But we are talking about huge sums of money. I mean, £54 billion being spent on defence in the last financial year. That's going to rise in this financial year to £57 billion in real money. These are huge sums.
Yeah, we're not actually very good at working out what it is that we need, what's cost effective and what's going to be useful in the future.
We don't get as much value for money as other countries as well.
Well, we don't even get as much value for money as some militia groups. Actually, the Houthis have done magnificent work on a shoestring budget actually to cause major disruption. The Israelis don't spend anywhere near as much as their sort of equivalents in the West do, and they manage perfectly fine. This is something
America supplies.
Labour has quietly backed continued arms deals with controversial regimes, despite years of posturing as a party that would end such practices. The message is unmistakable. Labour is no longer the party of peace, but the party of war profiteers, willing to trade principles for political funding. But the problems don't end there. For decades, Labour built its reputation as the staunch defender of the National Health Service, presenting itself as the final safeguard against creeping privatisation. Starmer and his party have repeatedly accused the Conservatives of trying to dismantle the NHS by starving it of resources, outsourcing services, and awarding contracts to private health firms. They pledged to keep healthcare public, free, and accessible to all, guaranteeing that no one would be forced to pay out of pocket for vital medical treatment. Their rhetoric painted a vivid picture. Labour was the party that would fight relentlessly to...
At the budget last year, we invested over £25 billion in the National Health Service. That's a record amount, and rightly so. And we put in over £1.8 billion since July on cutting waiting times alone. And that's investment that will deliver 40,000 extra appointments every single week, picking up on some of the techniques that you are using here. Now, that is an outcome that is wanted by everybody. It's wished for by everybody. But it's only possible because of the difficult choices that we confront.
We confront the truth, but it turns out that pledge was little more than political theater. Quadrature Capital holds major investments in private healthcare corporations such as United Health and HCA, firms that flourish when public healthcare falters. These companies profit when NHS services grow overloaded, when waiting lists stretch unbearably long, and when patients are forced to rely on costly private alternatives. The conflict of interest is glaring. The very industries that gain from a weakened NHS are now among Labour's largest financial supporters. Since entering office, Starmer's government has already taken steps that align seamlessly with the goals of its hedge fund backers. The bold NHS funding commitments Labour campaigned on have been quietly scaled back, ensuring that private healthcare continues to stand as an attractive.
We will also use the private sector as necessary to reduce those waiting lists. We've got a clear plan for 40,000 extra appointments each and every week. That's 2 million a year to get those waiting lists down. That will be done working with NHS staff, using evening facilities, weekend facilities. And we've talked it through with staff, but also I'm confident because there are models already in place. So St Thomas's Hospital in London is already doing this. In Leeds Hospital, I've been to see this at work. We'll use those teams across the country as the sort of prototype for other hospitals. So I'm convinced that we can do this. We will also use the private sector as necessary to reduce those waiting lists. They're already used at the moment, but we've got to get that waiting list down. It's nearly 8 million now. And that's talking to a man this morning who's had a hip operation. He's waited 2 years for that operation in pain. That's the human cost of the failure of this government.
Stricter rules on private healthcare providers have effectively allowed these firms to expand their hold over the UK's medical system without meaningful government oversight. Even more troubling, Starmer's team has started suggesting alternative funding options for the NHS, a vague but familiar phrase often used to rationalize creeping privatization. The implications are stark. Labour isn't fighting to protect the NHS. They are gradually handing it over to billionaire backers. Quadrature's investment in Labour wasn't an act of generosity. It was a calculated business decision, and one already yielding returns. The NHS may be strained, but it is not yet defeated.
The NHS may be broken, but it's not beaten. As the report says, the NHS may be in a critical condition, but its vital signs are strong. And we need to have the courage to deliver long-term reform. Major surgery, not sticking plasters. So this government is working at pace to build a 10-year plan. Something so different from anything that's gone before. But we have to fix the plumbing before turning on the taps. So hear me when I say this. No more money without reform.
No more money without reform. The deeper scandal isn't just Labour's hypocrisy. It's the concrete gains Quadrature has enjoyed from its discreet arrangement with Starmer's party. In just a few months, the hedge fund has seen enormous, returns on its political investment. One of the most immediate benefits has been Labour's move toward financial deregulation, a policy that directly advantages hedge funds like Quadrature. Starmer's government has already indicated its willingness to loosen restrictions on the financial sector, creating a more favorable environment for firms operating in offshore tax havens. Additionally, Quadrature, registered in the infamous Cayman Islands, stands to profit even further if corporate tax loopholes remain untouched. So far, Labour has shown no intent to tackle tax avoidance meaningfully, despite years of criticizing the financial sector for evading its fair share.
But the main UK-based entity is Quadrature Limited. But as of April last year, that was acquired wholly, 100%, by a company registered in the Cayman Islands called QC Ventures, QC being Quadrature Capital. Now, the good thing about the Cayman Islands, if you are not particularly keen on corporate transparency, is that it's much harder to get hold of the details of who actually owns a company, and unlike UK registered companies that file accounts at Companies House, and as journalists or as members of the public, we can go and have a bit of a look and a bit of a snoop around and kind of get a little bit of a sense of who might own it and how much money they're making and that kind of thing. If you are a company registered in the Cayman Islands or a number of other kind of offshore jurisdictions that are favoured for kind of tax and transparency.
And then there's the stock market itself. Quadrature holds enormous stakes in major corporations, and Labour's pro-business posture has reassured investors, boosting market confidence and guaranteeing that billionaire donors profit handsomely. Perhaps the most damaging element of this affair is the cover-up. The £4 million donation wasn't disclosed to the public until months after the election, and that delay was deliberate. Labour accepted the funds during a brief one-week window, just before rules required large political contributions to be reported in real time. This carefully planned timing ensured that voters had no knowledge of Labour taking hedge fund money before heading to the polls. It also delayed scrutiny of the deal until Starmer had already secured power. If the donation was entirely above board, why was it hidden? Labour knew exactly how damaging it would appear, so they took every step to...
But Sean, the other story that landed today about this £4 million from the Cayman Islands-based hedge fund, which includes investments in things like arms manufacturers, private healthcare, fossil fuels. I mean, those are all things that Labour Party has absolutely rallied against. And also, it looks like they received that money in that cushy little one-week window there, where it meant they didn't have to declare it until after the election, almost like they were trying to hide it. I mean, have they lost all kind of moral high?
Now, with the truth revealed, Labour's credibility lies in ruins. The party that claimed to champion ordinary citizens has been exposed as just another political machine serving the financial elite. Public outrage is growing. Polls show that 40% of voters now believe Starmer should resign, and Labour's approval ratings have suffered a serious decline. Even within the party, MPs are starting to turn against Starmer, fearing this scandal could drag Labour down before the next general election. Isn't it striking that companies donating millions to parties often receive benefits worth hundreds of millions in return? What are your thoughts on Britain effectively paying for the gains of Labour's donors? Share your opinions in the comments below on whether there should be an open investigation into Labour's donation scandal and whether Starmer should face consequences. Do you want to watch more videos like this? If so, please like, share, and subscribe to get updates on British politics and the events shaping it. Until the next video, stay tuned.